The problem we're trying to solve here, just for context, is that most restaurant owners don't hire until it's too late. Well, actually, that's one of the problems. The real problem is that most restaurant owners don't actually plan for their future in their business. So most people are living day to day. They might plan 2 weeks out, maybe 4 weeks if we're lucky, but they don't plan further than that. And typically we are unaware of how seasonality impacts our business, at least until it happens. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Scott, multiple unit restaurant owner for almost 20 years. And now with Ownership, we help restaurant owners increase their profits, their free time, and help them scale to more locations. So today, we're going to give you a little bit of a glimpse in what it's like to be a client. So I'm just going to review a tool with you that I think would be really cool for you to be able to utilize right now. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, if you're on Apple or Spotify podcast, basically I'll go through the math with you. And so you could easily do this and figure these numbers out using a calculator. All right. So the problem we're trying to solve here, just for context, is that most restaurant owners don't hire until it's too late. Well, actually, that's one of the problems. The real problem is that most restaurant owners don't actually plan for their future in their business. So most people are living day to day. They might plan 2 weeks out, maybe 4 weeks if we're lucky, but they don't plan further than that. And typically we are unaware of how seasonality impacts our business, at least until it happens. But like, I'll give you a perfect example. Like, we all know February 14th is Valentine's Day, and it's actually February 16th when I'm filming this. So we know it was Valentine's Day, but how many people started planning that early enough versus how many people started going, oh man, Valentine's Day is in like 2 weeks. I really got to get something together for that. Or when someone started calling for reservations, you were like, oh shit, yeah, I should probably work on the menu for that. So the point is, we aren't ahead of the game enough because we're so stuck in what's currently happening. And the problem with that is that if we're not ahead of the curve, we end up behind it. And so in one way that really impacts restaurants is hiring. And so there are two major turnover seasons per year. And again, this is relevant for, I would say, about 70% of restaurants. There are restaurants that follow a slightly different trend, but I'll talk about that too. But the trend that I'm using are most restaurants who have December, January, February being colder months, and then it gets warm in like March and April, and it starts to get up to that point. And then sales typically increase with the warmer weather. So that's relevant in kind of like northern states and in Canada and in a bunch of other states as well. Notable exceptions are places like Florida, like Arizona would be another one. There's different places that you'll notice your peak actually be a little earlier. So for example, you might notice your peak actually being in like January and February because it's warm enough, but it's not too hot where sales start to trend down. So the point we're trying to make here is we call this a spring hiring calculator, but realistically what it is a peak hiring calculator. So whenever your busiest period is, that's what we're going to focus on. So there's a few different data points we're going to collect. And the whole essence of what we're trying to do here is figure out how many people do we need for that peak period versus what we have right now. And the reason why this is important is picture this. All of a sudden your sales goes up by 30% or something like that, and you haven't hired anyone, and you then get a 2-week notice from a key person. All of a sudden, you're short a number of hours, and the only thing that you can do is you can go back and you can work more yourself, or you can try and hire, but guess what? Everybody else is already hiring, so it's not going to be as effective. It's going to take longer. That's why we want to avoid that. So how I first realized this was, and again, I like to think I'm smart. Realistically, I am just persistent. So I noticed this trend. I noticed it in the September period because that's another period for me because I had a location that was right by a college. So I noticed the same pattern from a hiring perspective around August, September. And I noticed that we always got a lot of turnover right around then. And then I also noticed we also got turnover right around like April and May. So I noticed that those were, two big issues. And I noticed that I always had to jump in and work more and try and solve it. And then, of course, when I needed to cover more shifts on the line, then all of a sudden I was also trying to hire at the same time, which meant my interviews were crap. And for those I did hire, we just threw them into the fire instead of training them properly, which obviously resulted in a lot of turnover. So like all of these things kept happening. And then as I worked more with the franchise that I was a part of, I noticed that it wasn't just me, but it was everybody. And so I remember talking to the president of the company and being like, hey man, like, out of this, we go into this staffing crisis, and then it takes 2 weeks to like get some people hired, 2 more weeks to kind of get it, them trained and stuff like that, and then 2 more weeks to get them actually up to speed. So it's like a 6-week cycle that basically 6 weeks of the year we are pulled down into just operations, and this happens twice a year. So it's 3 months of the year, and I'm like, we can't build a world-class business if 3 months of the year we're only focused on survival, right? So literally like a quarter of the year we're only focused on survival. Like that's not a good place to be. So this is kind of where I came up with this theory and where I came up with this calculator. So let's dive into this a little bit. So the data points that we need are your current month sales from last year and your current month sales from this year. So right now it's February that I'm calculating this. And ideally we want to do this either with the month that you're in, or like the month you've just passed, I should say, or your lowest point. So in this case, let's just use some really, really round numbers. And let's just say that the current sales last year, let's just say it was $75,000. So we're just going to put in some numbers here. And then the current month sales this year, let's just say that's $100,000. So not a million. I accidentally typed in a million. There we go. Actually, I typed in 750,075. There we go. So that should change that. Hold on a second. Too many zeros. There we go. So we're running at, say, a 33% increase over the previous year. So how we get that is we basically just divide. We take our current sales minus our previous year's sales, which is 75,000 in this case, and then you take the difference, which is 25,000, and then you divide that into the your previous year period. That gives you your rate of increase. So yeah, so then 25,000 divided that into 75,000 gives us 33.33. So we're trying to use round numbers just to make it simple. So it gives us a trajectory of 33%. So that is the norm that we've established here. And again, it's not a ton of data points. It's one data point, but it just kind of gives us an idea. Hey, how are we comparing to the previous year? Now, I'm also going to run this calculation where the numbers are different and maybe it's down. So we'll cover that. But just for the sake of this example, let's just say we're already trending up by 33%. Now, let's take a look at our peak sales month last year. And I have a note here that's usually April, May, or June is kind of what I normally have here. So let's make this a little bit bigger for everybody. So let's just say that during that period, let's not go crazy. Let's just make it 125,000 instead of 100. So all of a sudden, what that basically means is that during our busiest period, we go from doing 100,000 to doing 125,000. So from our, either current period or worst period to that. And so then we've got a couple calculations that happen, which is the sales difference trough to peak. And so basically that kind of tells us what the difference is based on, so think of it this way. The peak sales month last year, we're already doing 33% better. And then all of a sudden we're doing 25% better. So all of a sudden 25 and 33 would give us 66.67%. So this sounds like a lot of gibberish. I apologize. The YouTube video, I'm just demonstrating it here. But basically what we're doing is we're saying we're already up by 33%. And then we know that our normal, say May was always my peak period. So say for May, we're normally up 25% over that. So basically we're just adding 25% and 33%, and that's giving us a much bigger number. So what that then tells us is that based on our current trend and our normal trend from our, either current period or worst period to our best period, we are looking, instead of 125 that we did last year, we are looking at 166,000. Okay, so that's what we're anticipating based on the numbers that we just calculated. So based on a 33% trajectory plus, an additional 25% trajectory from our last month to our biggest month. Okay, hopefully everybody's following me on this. But what we want to do then is say, okay, now based on that, this is how much sales we're going to do. Woohoo, that's awesome. And what we also do is we have our average labor cost percentage, and then we kind of put in our average wage. So again, let's take this and let's just say our average labor is 30 and our average wage is, let's just say 25. Now, the reason why we calculate these things is we basically just want to calculate this into a person hour. So realistically, the numbers that come out here is total estimated current hours per month. So what it's saying is currently per month, we're using about 1,200 hours per month. So divide that by 4 and you kind of get your weekly number. And then what it's saying is that we take that same calculation and it's basically just your average wage. Well, technically what it is your sales, and then you're multiplying by the percentage. So in this case, 30% would be 0.3. So that gives you a number. Then you divide that in your average wage, which will give you an estimate number of hours, right? So that will give us our current hours per month, but it's saying that with the increase that we're about to have going from, $100,000 to 166, it's gonna be 2,000 hours. And so that what that is telling us is that there's an 800 hour gap per month or per week. That's 200 hours per week. So the way we have to look at this is from where I'm sitting right now, I'm gonna need 200 more hours. So do I have it within my current team to fill 200 more hours? And if that is the case, no problem, no action necessary. We probably just need to hire a person or two people to, cover in case of turnover or vacations or whatever, to give us some more fluidity. But most people right now, as we sit here and say January, February, in these periods, we're like, okay, I haven't hired, and I might have lost somebody. So now my hours are about even, I'm good. They're not thinking about, oh my God, I am going to literally have my hours, I'm going to need 50% more people than what I have right now. We just don't think about it. So then what happens, our sales go up and we scramble, and all of a sudden, all of the basics goes out the window. We end up working more, and it's just hectic, right? So that's why we do this calculation, and it's based on some data. And so we have a rough estimate as to where we will be. The other thing we also need to encounter or look ahead for, I should say, the unexpected turnover. The reason we call it unexpected is because you don't see it coming. You can't. It's unexpected. So you just need to prepare for it. So, say in my teams previously, maybe we had 20 people that worked for me per location. So in that 20, we'd probably hire, 1 or 2 people just to protect against the potential of the unexpected turnover and having to drop back into the business, which is not something that I wanted to do because I had 4 locations. And obviously I needed to be the CEO of the business and not the person, serving food to everybody. So let's run this calculation a little bit differently. Let's just say we're flat. And, we have 0% growth and our peak only goes up. So this 75,000 in sales now only goes up to 100 during our best period. So what that tells us now is that the sales difference is there's still 33% sales difference. And with the trend, it's 33% because again, we're flat compared to last year. And, based on all the same numbers, what happens is we're going to have a 75-hour gap per week. And so realistically, that's 2 people. So in that case, we probably want to hire 3 just to cover our bases, maybe 4 to have a little extra protection. And so the thing that comes up usually when I talk to people, they understand the math on it. They're like, okay, I know I need to hire, but I don't have the hours for them right now. And then I say, okay, well, how long does it take you to hire somebody? And they're like, oh, it's 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, great. So let's do that. How long does it take them, to train them? It's 2 to 4 weeks to get them up to speed to where they should be. Okay, so that's 6 weeks from now. And as I'm filming this, it is February 16th. So that would put you April 1st. And I'm like, hey, are your sales higher in April than they are right now? Well, yeah. Okay, great. So we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. So you just got to do it. And by the time you actually get these people hired and trained, we're going to be ready. Because here's the thing. You're still going to have to pay someone, you're going to have to pay their training regardless of whether you're already in a busy period or right now. It's a cost that's going to be there either way. So you might as well do it early so you're prepared for the busy period, as opposed to trying to do it when you're already busy and you're stressed out and you won't train them nearly as well. Why put yourself through that, right? The math's going to be the same regardless. If it's still going to cost you X amount of hours, it's going to cost you X amount of hours no matter where. So we just want to understand that, and we just want to get ahead of it. Hey, real quick. What if you could identify thousands in hidden profits, optimize your food and labor costs, and know exactly what moves to make next to grow your restaurant business, all in less time than it takes to drink your morning coffee? That's exactly why I created the Restaurant Weekly Financial Tracker. It's free and available on the link that's in the description. Grab your free copy now and focus in on your restaurant's profitability today. So now the other thing that I will share with you on this is what we call hiring efficiency. And so I actually did a calculator for this too. I love my calculator. So when we're working with clients, we try and have as many tools as we can to help make things easy. So the next part of this is I said, hey, so how many employees do you need? And so we could type in a number. I've already have 4 selected here. And just based on our average stats around hiring, this kind of goes through what we call the hiring funnel. And it basically shows you if you need 4 employees, you need to hire 5. Reason is because on average, 33% don't work out, right? So if I put you needed 2, it's probably going to tell me I need to hire 3. There we go. Yeah, so that's correct. So that's what I always say. I always say that about 33% don't work out. They don't make it past, say, like 2 to 4 weeks. So yeah, you always just need to prepare for it. That's just the law of averages. Not everybody's going to work out, right? Now, if you have, 100% of your hires work out, amazing for you. Don't pay any attention to this. The average restaurant has about 33% of their hires that they hire, make the offer. They might even start training and then back out or whatever. So it is a thing. So then in order to find these 5 people you need to make those hires to and hire in order to get 4 that actually stick, you need to do about 21 interviews. And so what is that? I think it's like 4 interviews per 1 individual. And so, yeah, so realistically, my stats were always a lot less. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. No, this lines up. So I'm thinking about the next stat. So we hired maybe 25% of the people that we interviewed, somewhere in that regard. You can hire more than that. We were just really picky and we had really high standards. So we were okay waiting and making sure we didn't make the wrong hires. I was okay with that. So we only hired about 25% of the people that we interviewed. And that was pretty normal for us. So the next line here is the number of interviews booked. And so here we need to book 43 interviews. Why? Because on average, there's like a 50% no-show rate to most interviews. Now, that's statistically across the entire year. And like this is during the better times, I should say. The next one below I'm going to show you is more of like a worse time to do all of the hiring. So yeah, you need to have about a 50% no-show rate for interviews. That's pretty normal. So you just plan for it, right? You just assume that that's going to happen. Yeah, it is what it is. So then in order to do that, we need to get the applications, and the applications needed to get those interviews booked is about 85. So again, it kind of doubles again. So the stat I used to say is that we typically hired 5 to 10% of those that applied. That's kind of what happens. So just that's kind of the ratio that we use. So that's what this is based on. Now, like I said, this is the good months of hiring. So like January, February, those are times when very few other restaurants are hiring and very few other businesses are hiring because revenue is slower, right? People aren't out there trying to hire more people when their sales are down, right? They're trying to focus on giving hours to the staff that they do have, or they're working more themselves to try and save money. So this is why if you're hiring during those times, you have less competition and you can take the best possible people, because let's face it, the best possible people are going to go with the best job that's available at the time. And let's face it, when we wait till April and May or September or November, when the retail season kind of kicks in for hiring and stuff like that, they're going to go for the best position, and that might not be yours. Right? So when there's less competition, you kind of get the pick of the litter as far as that goes. Now, let's do the same thing only with the bad months. So the stats I needed to kind of share here, in order to get the 4 hires, we actually need to hire 9. So to get 4 people to stick, we need 9. Why? It's because our success rate drops drastically. One thing I've noticed is that hiring during these periods of high competition means that very few people stick. It is way less. And it's really annoying because it's when you really want them to stick because you really need it. They're like, nope, found another job. Oh, sorry, this other job just got back to me that took longer to make a decision. I'm going to go with them instead. Or you're training them horribly because you're just so busy and you don't have time. So then they're jumping out because it's too chaotic. Like all of that stuff happens. So I say, you need to hire about 9 to get 4. But that's different because remember previously to get 4, we needed to hire 5. So it's very different. Right. So the second reason we want to hire at the right time is just because it makes it so much easier. It's less expensive for us. So that's why we need to make sure we do that. Now, the interviews needed are 45 to get the 9, because what I've found is that you get stuck in times of high competition when everyone's hiring. Like the people that start showing up for interviews are the people that nobody else wanted. Like if they could have gotten a job somewhere else, they would have gotten it. So you get the worst potential applicants that you could possibly get. And every year my managers are coming to me like, man, like what's happened with these applicants? They're terrible. And I'm like, yeah, it's because it's that time of year. And, like maybe that manager didn't plan ahead enough, right? Or whatever the case is. I'm like, yeah. It'll improve, but it's going to take like 4 weeks to improve. This is the reality. So sometimes we just need to suck it up and deal with it until it changes. So that's part of what it is. And then interviews booked, we need 135, which is crazy because attendance rates go from instead of about 50%, which is already terrible, goes to like 30, 35%. So it just makes it even worse. And then the applicants, we get less responsiveness from the applicants. So we need like 400 applicants. So to give 4 employees, we basically needed like 4 times of everything else versus when we're hiring during a good time. Now, if you don't believe me, just test this out in your own business. Your numbers will be a variance of this. But my guess is that usually when you're desperate, you're going to hire whoever walks in, and then they're going to turn over in a few weeks, and then you're going to be right back where you started, and you're going to be thinking that it's all the terrible candidates. There's no good candidates in my area. There's no good employees. Can't hire anybody. And that's true, but it's also because you're hiring at the wrong time. You didn't plan enough, right? So that's the piece we have to understand on this, is that timing is one of the biggest factors when it comes to hiring, because it is a competition. You're competing with a bunch of other businesses for labor, and there are times when it's way worse. The overall economy also affects us. If the economy is in a down period, this will be a little bit easier. During 2021, 2022, when there was what we call the labor shortage, this was just worse. It was just worse. This is what it was, because there were fewer people in the job market and there were more people hiring. And that just created a disproportionate supply and demand situation where there wasn't enough supply to meet the demand. So what happened? Wages went through the roof, right? And if you're a restaurant that didn't have great margins, you couldn't afford to hire people. So what you did is you hired the people you could afford, which weren't very good, which stressed you out even more, which drove a lot of owners, I'm sure, to exit the industry. But that's just the reality of, we all know supply and demand, but we don't think about it when it comes to the labor that we hire. So that's what I wanted to share today. So again, this is just an example of a tool that we use with our clients, and we kind of help them plan for all of this, because one thing that we notice is that if they go in and they're prepped and they have enough staff, they can still watch their finances. They can focus on upselling and make the most revenue possible during their busiest time of the year, which adds a disproportionate amount of net profit to their yearly P&L. The reason why is, think of it this way: if you can get an extra $2 per check by upselling properly, does it make more sense to do that when you're busy or when you're slow? Now, most people say when you're slow because you need it the most, but the reality is if you're twice as busy when you're busy versus when you're slow, that means that $2 is double, like the worth is double, because you've got twice as many customers. Right? So it adds way more money to your overall yearly P&L than it does during the slow time. But what do most owners do is they get stuck in the weeds. They stop focusing on the basics. They just focus on survival instead of trying to grow and make the most money possible. And that is part of the issue. And so when we actually get our clients to focus on this, the results are massive. They're able to have the best years ever, the best months ever, the most profit. It's great, but it all comes from planning ahead. And this is one of the tools that we use to do it, because what we found is that if you don't have enough labor, like you don't have enough staff, the owner always drops down. And then you're in the business instead of on the business, and that's just a death sentence for your business financials. So, all right, guys, hope this was helpful. And again, I apologize if the math was a little more complicated if you're not watching this on YouTube. If you are watching it and you can see some visuals, great. You can see exactly what this is. And I just suggest do the math yourself. Just go through, make those calculations, and figure out what this is for your business so that you can get ahead of the curve. All right, guys, hope this helps. This episode is brought to you by Ownership Training, where we help restaurant owners increase their profits while spending more time with their family. And if you want to know exactly what it would take to grow your profit margin to 15% and beyond while spending more time with your family, my team has a few spots open this week for a free 15-minute restaurant assessment call. Just click the book a call link in the description and we'll show you the exact frameworks we're using to help our clients do this in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.